In this video, we're going to look at finding files and directories. We're going to look at the locate command and specifically talk about the update db command. We'll look at the find command, and within that, we're going to look at tests, operators, actions, predefined and user-defined, and xargs. And finally, we will look at options. I'm logged into the CytoMill server, and I'm in my home directory. So you can see that right there. And if you do LL, we can see all the directories and files that I have at the time of this recording. So this is the area we're going to kind of play around in a little bit to find some files and folders. The first thing I want to do is just look at the locate command, which is actually the easiest one. And so if you just do locate, and say you do SShaper, like that, you can get a whole listing of things because SShaper is the folder where all this stuff resides. So of course it's going to be quite a long list of everything I've done. So what locate does is it searches through the database and it looks for something that matches whatever you type in. And it can be very broad like this one, or it can be very specific. Like for example, if I do locate and I'm looking for this file user bin, I just want to find that file. So I hit enter, and you can see that now it's down to just this one file it found, and it's userbin.txt. So I didn't have to write .txt or anything like that. I just write the file name. Now, the one problem with this is if the database is not updated, then it's not going to find things. So new files that you just created or things like that, you'd have to update. Unfortunately, you don't have the power to do that in this system, but what you would do is if you had sudo privileges, you just go sudo and you just do update db, and that command right there will allow us to update the entire what it will do is it will go out there and it will search all the files and folders and it'll put them into the database, and that's what makes locate work so fast. So that's pretty much locate. It's pretty simple, but it's also a little limited on what you can do. Let's take a look at the find command. So if I start up here and I write find and I put in the tilde, then that's going to find all the files and folders that are in my local directory. And of course, it's going to bring back quite the list. That's not really too practical for me because I want to find something more specific. Well, we can do things called tests, and those are little conditions that we can put into this thing to limit our searches. All right, so let me clear the screen. And let me do find again. Again, we're going to look for everything in the my local directory. If I don't put that tilde in there, it will search the entire computer, like the entire server, I should say. And I don't want to do that. That's way too much. So I'm going to enter the name, okay? The name, and we'll be looking for anything that ends with txt. So the name is one of our test conditions, and it's looking for what name do you want. And in quotes, I'm just going to put star.txt. Star, of course, means it can be any number of characters. It just has to end with txt. And I hit that, and now I'm down to this nice little list here of all the txt files that are in that directory. So that kind of helps me out a lot. Well, I want to go a little bit further than that, so I'm going to go find again, and I'm going to do my tilde, remember, local directory, and I'm going to add a size to this let's see, it has to be 200 bytes or more. So that's what the plus 200C means. C stands for bytes, and that's listed right in your book. And then we have name, and we're going to again do the star.txt, just like that. Okay, so when I do those, now all of a sudden I get a much smaller list. Why? Well, because they have to meet this criteria and they have to meet this criteria. They have to meet those two tests. And so this is a very nice way using these little tests to get into really saying, okay, I'm looking for some very specific things. This one, maybe you don't know what the exact file name is. This is where find comes in really handy. Now, we can also do what's known as tests with operators. So I'll go ahead and clear my screen. And operators are conditions where it's and or. You can actually do not. But we're going to look at a simple and one, for example. So if I do find, again, local directory, and then I'm going to go backslash parentheses like that, and then I go hyphen type a file, and I'm looking for the size, and I want it to be greater than 200 bytes. Okay, so I'm going to do something like that. I have to use the parentheses, the backslashes on the parentheses, or it will not work. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do backslash slash and parentheses. Do the same thing. I'm going to do type F and size of 250C, but this time I'm going to do negative. So that way it's basically saying I'm looking for any file that's in my home directory that it has to be a file, can't be a directory, and it has to be greater than 200 bytes but less than 250 bytes. Okay, so that's the way I'm going to do it. This is the and means this condition has to be true and this condition has to be true. And or would mean this could be true or this could be true. But in this case, both these have to apply to make it work. I hit that and I come back with this error message saying you have too many of these little parentheses. Well, what's actually happening is I didn't put a space right here. And so when I didn't put a space there, it doesn't know what to do. So when you write these things, please make sure you put spaces after each of the parentheses and before. So make sure you space things out right, or you're going to have those problems, and it can be kind of frustrating. So you do this, and sure enough, it found two files for me right here. Okay, so that's actually kind of nice. Now I can do something else, and these are some actions that I can do. And what actions basically do is they allow us to get more information in this particular circumstance. So I've got this, but I want to do more. So I'm going to use what's known as a predefined action, which is -ls. And when I do that, I get the INO numbers, I get all the detailed information of these two files. And I can actually see their size, which in this particular case, they happen to be the same size, just by chance. Okay? So that's really kind of nice. But there's a better way to do it, because what if I want to do something more custom for me? I want to remove them or something like that. Well, you can do what's known as user-defined actions. And the book actually gives you two examples of them. I think Xargs is by far easiest to use, so that's one I'm going to kind of work on. So I can do the same type of thing here, but instead of doing this, I can just pipe it to Xargs, and then I can go ls-l. And there you are. It doesn't give me the INO number, but I don't have to worry about that. Okay, I'm not really too concerned about that. If I do this, then I get the INO number back. Okay, so this gives me a lot more power in what I'm doing. Just keep in mind, Xargs does not understand aliases, so if I was to come here and do LL, which is the alias for LSL, it doesn't work, because it doesn't understand what that is. Okay, and then the last thing that we have is we basically have options. And what options do is they say, how far down are we going to be looking for something? So let's just go back a little bit to this command right here. And you can see that I have one file that's directly inside of SShaper, and the other file that's inside of Process, that's inside of Playground, that's inside of SShaper. So I'm going to run the same command, but just before I run it, I'm going to be looking at max depth. And I'm going to set that to 1. Okay? And I have to put that first, because we have to make sure we're telling it how far down we're going to look first before we start looking. Okay? And we're going to come down here, and we can keep our Xargs there. It doesn't really matter either way. And when we hit enter, you can see this is the file it found. It just found 1. Why? Because I said just go to the max depth of 1, which is basically this one folder. It's where we're at. Okay, so if I do it again, and I do 2, like that, and I run it, I get the same thing. Why? Well, because I'm only looking for 2 levels down. So this and this. Okay, I need to go 3 levels down. So let me do this again, and I'm going to now do 3, like that. And once I do that, now I get both this file here, and I get this file here. And there's other options that you can do there. Of course, it's in your book, but I'm just going to give you an example of how all these different parts of the find command work: the tests, the actions, and the options. To summarize, we're looking at finding files and directories. We looked at the locate command, and basically what that does is it searches a database for the specific name of what you entered, and as you can see, you can get a lot of returns, so it can sometimes not be so helpful. And we also talked about the update DB, which of course if the database has not been updated, then you may not find what you're looking for. We looked at the find command, which is a little bit more precise on what it can do. and we looked at the tests, and within the tests we look at operators. So tests were kind of like conditions that we can put on it to filter down the type of file we're looking for. We had actions, which were predefined and user defined, and that could like print out the entire directory, the long look of the directory or something like that, or the file, I should say. And we also had xargs that we looked at and used. And xargs just is much easier to use. And then the last thing we looked at was options, where we kind of looked at how far down we can dig in our directories for the options. Is kind of limiting the scope of where we want Find to actually look for things, because otherwise it could, if you don't set it up right, it can look for the entire server. So options can be helpful with that as well.